They say you don't notice when you're fading away until you're already a ghost. My name's Clara. I'm 34. And if you had asked anyone in my family about me last month, they probably would have said, "Oh, she's doing fine somewhere." That somewhere was never an invitation. It was an excuse. I was always the one who remembered birthdays, brought thoughtful gifts, stayed behind to wash dishes while everyone else floated away into laughter and inside jokes I was never part of. I thought loyalty would earn me a seat. I thought kindness would carve a space for me at the table. I thought wrong. It all came to a head at my nephew Mason's 7th birthday party, the last place I thought I'd finally see the truth laid bare. I showed up with the Lego spaceship he'd been dreaming about. I stayed late, helping scrub cake frosting off cheap paper plates, smiling even when my sister-in-law, Tessa, barely acknowledged me between texts. It felt normal. For once, it felt like I belonged again. So, with the kind of hopeful stupidity that only years of quiet exclusion can breed, I said, "Can't wait to see everyone at the family dinner tomorrow." The silence that followed cracked something inside me. Tessa choked on her forkful of cake and laughed. Hard. Jason, my brother, didn't even look up from scrolling on his phone. "You don't know, do you?" she smirked. "That dinner? It had already happened, without me." My Aunt Ruth gleefully showed me the pictures. Everyone gathered around fairy lights strung across my parents' backyard, champagne toasts, big hugs. Even the second cousins I'd forgotten existed. Everyone but me. The cherry on top? Mom Ruth stood at the head of the table during dessert, glass raised high, declaring how blessed she was to have all her family there. All. Except me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood there, hands still dripping with dishwater, watching as Tessa tossed me a look that said it all without saying anything. Maybe you should get the hint. And somehow, after all these years, I finally did. It's funny the way the truth doesn't crash into you all at once. It leaks in slowly, filling the cracks you spent years pretending weren't there. That night, after leaving Mason's party without a goodbye, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't drive. I didn't scream. I just sat there, the reality soaking through every layer of denial I had left. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen to forget me. Jason, Ruth, Tessa, even Frank, my father, who had once promised I'd always have a place in this family, had let it happen, piece by piece. Year after year, birthday after birthday, memory after memory that never had my name in it. I replayed Mason's party in my head, the way no one really made room when I arrived, the way conversations slid around me like water around a stone. I remembered the Christmas dinners where my seat was an afterthought, set with mismatched silverware and a paper napkin, while Jason's kids had personalised place cards and presents stacked to the ceiling. I remembered the family group chats I wasn't in, the photos I was cropped out of, the weddings I heard about third hand, the hospital stays no one thought to tell me about. It wasn't one slight. It was 1,000 tiny cuts. And tonight, they all finally bled out at once. I could have called them out. I could have demanded answers, forced apologies. But standing in that kitchen, dripping in secondhand rejection, I realised something important. I didn't want to fight for a place anymore. I was done begging to exist. And maybe, just maybe, it was time they learned what life looked like without the ghost they'd gotten so good at ignoring. I went home that night and pulled out my laptop. One by one, I opened folders, financial records, property deeds, bank statements, all the invisible ways I'd been holding them up for years without them ever bothering to ask how. The anonymous maintenance fund that kept Ruth's aging farmhouse from collapsing. The quiet scholarships that kept Jason's kids in private schools. The emergency dental bills I paid for Frank when he cracked a molar 2 summers ago. All funded by me. All tied neatly into grant programs and trust accounts they thought were falling like gifts from heaven. No one ever thought to wonder where the rain came from. No one ever thought the storm might end. I smiled, not with bitterness, but with something colder, clarity. If they didn't want me as family, fine, but they no longer got the benefits of my silence. I closed the laptop, feeling lighter than I had in years. Tomorrow I would start making calls, and this time I wasn't coming back to fix what broke. I was going to let it break. There's a particular kind of power that comes from knowing you don't owe anyone anything anymore. The morning after Mason's birthday party, I woke up with a kind of stillness humming inside me. Not anger, not heartbreak, something cleaner, sharper. The first made coffee, sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, and started dismantling the world they had built on my back. First, the Family Maintenance Fund. Years ago, when Ruth's farmhouse started falling apart, I'd set up a private LLC to funnel money into anonymous grants for community family preservation. Translation: I paid to keep her roof from caving in. The plumbing? The new septic tank? The HVAC replacement 3 years ago? That was me too. They never asked who the benefactor was. They were just relieved that the universe still provided. I drafted the paperwork to dissolve the LLC in under an hour. My lawyer, Brianna, a no-nonsense woman who had once described herself as professionally petty, handled the rest. She didn't even ask for an explanation. She just said, "Finally pulling the plug, huh?" "Yeah," I replied, my voice flat. Time they learned where the faucet really came from. Next, the education funds. Jason's kids, Mason included, had been recipients of quiet scholarships through another program I'd set up years ago. I'd matched their tuition payments every semester, pretending the money came from state endowments and private grants. 2 emails and 3 signed letters later, the scholarships were gone. Retroactively. Tessa's small Etsy business. That assistant she swore she'd hired with her own savings? That assistant was actually on my silent payroll, under the guise of a women entrepreneurs fund I'd created just for her. Effective immediately, that fund was dissolved too. I sat back and stared at the neat pile of signed cancellations on my desk. It looked so small, so harmless, a stack of papers no thicker than a children's book. And yet I knew the storm these documents would unleash would be anything but small. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a bystander in my own story. I wasn't the quiet supporter anymore, the shadow paying the bills while being cropped out of the pictures. I was the architect of their consequences. The silence didn't last long. 3 days later, Ruth called me. I watched the phone vibrate across my counter, her name flashing insistently. Ignored it. Then came Jason. Then Tessa. Voicemails started stacking up. The AC's broken, Clara. Do you know anything about the fund? This is urgent. Mason's tuition payment bounced, Clara. We're getting late fees. Can you check? Hey, Clara. Weird question. Did something happen with the assistant's hours? She just quit without notice. Totally freaked out about her paycheck. Each message was more frantic than the last. I didn't respond to any of them. They wanted the ghost to fix their problems again. But this time, the ghost had better things to do. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. Because there was still one tie left, one final thread binding me to them, even after everything had been cut. The riverfront property, the old family retreat. It had once belonged to my grandparents. A modest but beautiful farmhouse tucked along the banks of a wide, lazy river, shaded by old oaks and weeping willows. It was the only place that had ever really felt like home. When Grandpa passed, The house was split between Ruth and her sister. When Aunt Valerie died, her half was inherited by Tessa. Years ago, when Ruth fell behind on taxes and maintenance fees, I quietly bought her half to keep it from slipping into foreclosure. Legally, that made me a 50% owner, but nobody ever updated the family scorecard. They kept using the property like it was theirs, summers, holidays, barbecues, without ever asking permission, without ever inviting me. I paid for repairs. I funded dock renovations. I even replaced the entire kitchen after Ruth flooded it by accident. They never said thank you. They never even pretended to include me. I had let it slide because somewhere deep down I still wanted to believe I belonged. That maybe if I stayed quiet long enough, worked hard enough, they'd see me. But after Mason's party, after Ruth's dinner speech, after Tessa's smirk, I knew better. This wasn't my family. This wasn't my home. It was time to stop subsidizing people who treated me like a stranger. 3 weeks before Memorial Day, the weekend when they traditionally flooded the riverfront farmhouse for their annual family gathering, I filed paperwork through Brianna to partition my half of the property under a conflict clause. If the owners couldn't agree on shared usage, then access was restricted until new terms were negotiated, legally, formally, in writing. Meaning, they couldn't step foot onto that land without my permission. And surprise, they never even opened their legal mail. Too used to the world smoothing itself out beneath their feet, they didn't notice the ground was crumbling until they tried to stand on it. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. I waited. Friday morning of Memorial Day weekend, I packed a cooler, loaded my truck, and drove down to the river. The farmhouse looked just the same as it had when I was a kid: whitewashed wood, peeling green shutters, the old rocking chair on the porch still gently swaying in the morning breeze. It hurt for a second, not because I missed them, but because I missed the person I thought I could be with them. I parked my truck sideways across the gravel driveway, blocking access, and unlocked the house. Then I waited. Around noon, they came. Jason, Ruth, Tessa, Mason. 3 cars full of people laughing and carrying coolers and folding chairs. A parade of entitlement, marching toward what they thought was still theirs. Until they saw me. Until they saw the padlocks, the posted signs, the steel gate blocking the dock access. The laughter died on their lips. Tessa was the first to approach, arms crossed, mouth tight. "What is this?" I smiled, slow and easy. "Memorial Day weekend," I said. "Thought I'd come down and enjoy my property." "You can't do this," Jason barked, looking around like he expected reinforcements to drop from the sky. "We've always come here." "Yeah," I said, "on my dime." Ruth finally spoke, her voice trembling with that particular blend of confusion and fear that comes when people realize the free ride might be over. "Clara, sweetheart, please. This place is for the family." "Funny," I said, tilting my head. "You didn't seem to think I was family last weekend." The silence was deafening. I let them stew in it for a minute longer before delivering the final blow. "From now on, if you want to use the property, you'll need a formal co-owner agreement. Split maintenance costs. Schedule visits. Respect boundaries." I smiled wider. "Or we can sell," Tessa exploded. "You're doing this over hurt feelings? Grow up, Clara." I didn't flinch. "No," I said calmly. "I'm doing this because I finally grew up, and I realized family isn't supposed to feel like a charity case." They argued. They pleaded. They guilt-tripped. It didn't matter. The paperwork was filed. The gate was locked. The era of quiet exploitation was over. They left eventually, slammed doors, angry shouts, Ruth's tears trailing like a broken ribbon down the dusty driveway. I stayed. I cracked open a beer, sat on the porch, and watched the river roll by, slow and wide and utterly indifferent. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. It would have been easy to stop there. I could have kept the gate up, enforced the agreement, watched them stumble over legal fees and maintenance bills they couldn't afford, but deep down I knew better. The farmhouse wasn't just a building, it was a memory machine, a place thick with history I had once fought to be part of, birthday parties under the willows, fishing with Grandpa, summers that smelled like river water and grilled corn. Keeping half of it would mean keeping half the pain too. I didn't want a front row seat to watch my family's entitlement rot something I had loved. I wanted a clean break. So, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, I met Brianna for coffee. She slid a file across the table like a weapon. "Buyout offers," she said simply. "You have options, good ones." Turns out, demand for riverfront property was higher than ever. Retirees looking for a second home, rich city folks chasing rural dreams, developers eager to turn nostalgia into rental cabins. But I didn't want just any buyer. I wanted someone who would respect the land, not trample it for profit or Instagram likes. After 2 weeks of careful vetting, I found them Margaret and Lewis, a retired couple from North Carolina. No kids, no drama, just a love for fishing, gardening, and quiet mornings by the river. When I told them about the co-ownership mess, they didn't blink. "We'll fence off our half," Margaret said, smiling. "Let them figure it out." I offered them a slight discount if they agreed to install a gate. Not an ugly, towering thing, just a clear, polite boundary. They agreed. Papers were signed, deposit wired. It was almost too easy. The real challenge was the letter. I couldn't just vanish. Not after everything. I needed them to know, really know, why the world they took for granted was crumbling under their feet. It took me 3 nights to write it. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted every word to cut without cruelty, to burn without leaving ashes on my hands. In the end, it was simple. Brutally simple. To Ruth, Frank, Jason, Tessa, and whoever else this concerns, for years I stayed silent. I paid the bills, I smiled through the exclusions, I swallowed the loneliness like medicine I wasn't allowed to spit out. I gave and waited for you to see me, to love me, to treat me like family. You didn't. You laughed when I wasn't invited. You called me dramatic when I noticed. You let me pay, but never let me belong. So this is me finally taking the hint. The scholarships are gone. The maintenance funds are dissolved. The farmhouse is sold. You won't be able to pretend I was never there anymore. Now, there will be a gate standing where I once stood, unseen, unwelcome. I wish you all the life you deserve. I just won't be part of it anymore. Clara. I printed it on thick, cream-coloured paper, folded it neatly, placed it on top of the finalised sale documents, mailed everything to Ruth's address, certified, signature required. I didn't bother waiting for the explosion. I knew it would come. 3 days after they received it, my phone detonated. Missed calls, voicemails, texts full of outrage and desperation. "You're ruining everything. This is petty, Clara. We're family. You can't just erase us. Mum is heartbroken." How could you? I didn't answer, not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared enough about myself to stay silent. I spent that weekend packing up my apartment, not because I was running, because I was ready to move forward. I found a small house an hour outside the city, cozy, a little crooked, with a wide porch facing a field of sunflowers, the kind of place that didn't have ghosts hanging off the porch swing. Closing day came and went. The farmhouse officially belonged to Margaret and Lewis. A week later, they sent me a photo, the new gate, freshly installed, a simple wooden structure with a brass plate that read, "Private property, no trespassing." I laughed when I saw it. Not a bitter laugh. A real one, the kind you give yourself when you realize the monsters under your bed were just people you outgrew. The fallout was predictably messy. Tessa tried to rally the family against me. Group chats full of venom and martyrdom. Jason threatened legal action he couldn't afford. Ruth sent guilt-drenched letters scrawled in shaky handwriting. Frank, oddly, stayed quiet. It wasn't until weeks later that he showed up at my door. No speeches, no anger, just a pie in his hands and regret in his eyes. We sat on my porch eating in silence, the sun setting slow and heavy over the fields. He didn't apologize exactly, but sometimes silence says more than words ever could. He didn't stay long. He didn't have to. When he left, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. Done chasing love that had conditions. Done begging for crumbs from people who mistook my kindness for weakness. Done being invisible. There would always be scars. I wasn't naive enough to think otherwise. But scars aren't shameful. They're proof you survived. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving to be seen. I was surviving for myself. The funny thing about burning bridges, you start seeing how unnecessary some of them were to begin with. In the weeks after the farmhouse sale, the noise died down. No more frantic calls, no more guilt-laced texts. No more Ruth pretending to be the gracious, long-suffering mother. No more Jason lording his big brother wisdom over me. No more Tessa flashing her brittle smile, all teeth and no sincerity. Just silence, glorious, golden silence. And in that quiet, something unexpected grew, peace. It wasn't sudden. It didn't arrive in some grand, cinematic epiphany. It was slower than that, like thawing after a long winter you forgot you were trapped inside. It started small. Coffee tasted better without my phone, buzzing with passive-aggressive reminders about family obligations. Sleep came easier without worrying about the next emergency only I would be expected to fix. The air in my tiny sunflower-flanked house smelled cleaner, lighter, like it belonged only to me. I spent afternoons repainting the porch, the sun hot against my back, music blaring from an old speaker. I planted tomatoes in uneven rows behind the shed, laughing when half of them came up crooked. I invited friends over, real friends, not out of duty or guilt, but because I wanted to. People who didn't treat me like a resource or a mistake. People who saw me. One Saturday evening, we sat on the porch drinking cheap wine out of mason jars, the fields stretching out golden around us. Someone asked about my family. I shrugged. There, somewhere, I said, smiling into my glass. I didn't owe them my sadness anymore. I didn't owe them anything. The final thread snapped one crisp afternoon in November. Thanksgiving. Traditionally, the day my family crammed into Ruth's house, pretending for a few brittle hours that resentment and favoritism and old wounds didn't exist. I hadn't been invited in years. Not really. An obligatory text here or there, sent too late for me to say yes, without looking desperate. But this year, there wasn't even that. Instead, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I found Frank standing there, older, greyer, et smaller somehow. He didn't say much. Just handed me a foil-covered plate, turkey, stuffing, a sliver of pumpkin pie, and looked at me like he was memorizing my face. "Your mother's not doing great," he said finally, voice rough around the edges. I nodded. "I'm sorry to hear that." He hesitated. "She misses you." I didn't reply. Because missing someone you drove away isn't love, it's regret. And regret isn't my burden to carry. Frank didn't push. He just sat with me a while, silent. We ate cold turkey and even colder pie, and for the first time in our shared history, there were no expectations between us. Just two people who once tried and failed to build something called family. When he left, he said, "I'm proud of you, kid." And somehow that mattered. Not enough to change anything, but enough to let me close a door without slamming it. The seasons rolled on. Winter came, soft, grey, forgiving. I hung fairy lights around my porch. I learned how to bake bread that came out too dense, but still made my kitchen smell like magic. I took a pottery class and made a lopsided mug I used every morning like a trophy. I built a life, not a flashy one. Not one filled with staged photos or performative happiness. A real one, messy, honest, earned. There were still moments, of course. Moments when an old photo would pop up in my phone memories, Mason's first birthday, Tessa's graduation, a blurry shot of Ruth waving from the porch of the riverfront house. And it would ache, just a little, the loss of what could have been, if they had loved me better. If I hadn't spent so many years begging scraps from a table I helped set. But even the ache softened over time, like an old scar, there, but no longer tender to the touch. One evening, just before Christmas, I got a message. Not from Ruth, not from Jason, not even from Tessa, from Mason. It was a video. In it, he grinned at the camera, missing a front tooth, hair wild with static. "Hi, Aunt Clara," he said, voice sweet and proud. "I'm building another spaceship. It's even faster than the last one." Behind him, Jason's voice barked, "Mason, give me that phone right now." The video cut off sharply. I watched it 3 times, tears stinging my eyes. Not from grief, but from something gentler. Hope. Maybe the cycle would break with him. Maybe he wouldn't grow up thinking love was transactional. Maybe he'd remember that somewhere out there was an aunt who showed him it was okay to walk away from people who made you feel small. I sent a reply. "Hey, buddy, that sounds amazing. I bet it's the fastest ship in the whole galaxy. I'm so proud of you. I'm always here, okay? No matter what." I didn't expect a response. That wasn't the point. Sometimes you send love out like a lighthouse signal, even if no one sails home right away, because it's not about who comes back. It's about knowing you lit the way, even in the dark. I leaned back in my creaky porch chair that night, the stars stitched across the black sky, the cold air biting at my cheeks. I thought about the girl I used to be, desperate, anxious, hungry for a place to belong. I thought about Clara now, messy, loud when she wanted to be, silent when it mattered, unapologetically hers. And I realized freedom isn't a thunderclap or a parade. It's choosing yourself over and over again, even when no one else does, especially then. I smiled into the dark, pulled my blanket tighter around my shoulders, and whispered into the night, "I'm finally home." Story 2. For years I joked that I was my family's personal ATM. It wasn't funny, but humour was the only way I could swallow the bitterness. For 5 exhausting years, I supported my younger brother, Ryan, after his divorce shattered whatever stability he had left. Ryan was 32 when his wife walked out, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. He could be impulsive, moody, and had a nasty habit of blaming everyone else for his problems. But he was my brother. And when our parents, riding the "we're retired" excuse, refused to help, the burden fell squarely on me. I'm Luke, 36 years old now. Just a regular guy working a regular job in construction. I get 1 vacation a year if I'm lucky, and I'm still driving the same 10-year-old truck. But when Ryan needed help, rent, utilities, groceries for his daughter Emma, I stepped up. I told myself, family takes care of family, even when it meant cutting corners for myself. For a while, I thought I was doing the right thing. I even bought Emma a tablet for school when she was 8, chipped in for her birthday parties every year, and helped cover winter coats, school supplies, whatever came up. Then, about a year ago, Ryan finally got a decent job, a salaried position with benefits. I was relieved. Finally, I thought, a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't pull support immediately. I gave it time, figuring he needed breathing room to catch up financially. But that's when things started to change. At family dinners, Ryan would brag about the new sneakers he bought, the upgraded gaming system, the designer sunglasses. I bit my tongue. Everyone deserves a little fun after hardship, right? Then last week happened. It was Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's. Me, Ryan, Emma, our folks, and our Uncle Mike. Between bites of lasagna, Ryan casually mentioned he was thinking of buying a $700 watch, just because he deserved it. I stared at him across the table, fork frozen midair. You're seriously spending hundreds on a watch while I'm still covering part of your grocery bills? I asked, keeping my voice even. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair like he'd just scored a touchdown. Don't be cheap, Luke. Cheap. The word hit harder than I expected. After 5 years of scraping by, skipping vacations, declining promotions that would have required relocating just so I could be nearby for Emma, I was cheap. The room went dead silent. Mum and Dad suddenly found their plates very interesting. Ryan smirked like he'd just dunked on me. Only Uncle Mike looked genuinely uncomfortable. I put my fork down, calmly, carefully. You want to talk about cheap, Ryan? Let's talk about how I paid your rent while you bought luxury sneakers. Let's talk about how Mum and Dad didn't want to interrupt their retirement cruises to lift a finger, and I ended up being the sucker cleaning up your mess. Well, guess what? I'm done. Ryan tried to laugh it off, but I wasn't finished. No more rent, no more groceries, no more birthday gifts. You're officially on your own, buddy. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and before I left, I turned to him one last time. And don't think this is me being temporarily mad. From now on, you're responsible for your own life. As for Emma, I hope she grows up to be better than this, but she's your responsibility, not mine. Uncle Mike clapped me on the back as I stormed out. About time somebody said it, he muttered under his breath. Driving home that night, I felt free, angry, sure, but free. For 5 years, I'd been bleeding myself dry to prop up someone who saw me as a walking wallet. No more. The peace didn't last long. A week passed with total silence from Ryan. No texts, no calls, not even an angry voicemail. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd finally realized he had to stand on his own. I was wrong. Late one night, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Mum and Dad on the porch, looking like they were preparing for battle. We need to talk about Ryan, Mum snapped, barging past me without waiting for an invite. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. Do we? Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Emma's struggling, Luke. She's innocent in all this. Don't punish the child because you're mad at your brother. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of it all cracked something inside me. Let me get this straight. You two, who refused to help because you were too busy enjoying early retirement, now want to guilt-trip me into bailing him out again. That's not fair, Mum snapped. We're retired. You're young. You're capable. He's your brother. And he's your son. I shot back. Funny how you only remember that when it's convenient. The argument spiraled, fast. The same old song, family helps family. I'm heartless. Emma shouldn't suffer because of adult problems. Finally, I cut them off. You want to help him so badly. You write the checks. Mum scoffed like I'd just suggested sacrificing a limb. We're not going to enable him. Exactly, I said, opening the door. Neither am I. They left, grumbling about how selfish I'd become. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel selfish. I felt sane. 2 days later, everything exploded. It was a Thursday night when my phone buzzed. I was halfway through a beer and a rerun of some mindless reality show when I saw Ryan's name flash across the screen. Curiosity got the better of me, I answered. What's up? I said flatly. Ryan's voice was almost cheerful. Too cheerful. Just wanted to let you know I'm moving out of the apartment next month, he said. I blinked. What? Can't afford it without me. Oh, I can afford it, he said, the smugness dripping off every word. I just found something better. I sat up a little. Better? Like what? He chuckled. Moving back in with Mum and Dad. It took a second for the words to land. Then it felt like someone sucker punched me in the gut. You're serious, dead serious, they offered. Said they didn't want Emma to suffer because of your little tantrum. His voice was light, like he was already kicking his feet up on their couch. I didn't even have time to fully process it before he threw out one last grenade. Oh, and you might want to check your credit report. Just a heads up. My stomach dropped. What the hell does that mean? He laughed. Full, genuine laughter this time, and then hung up. Panic kicked in. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my credit monitoring app. The screen loaded, and I swear I felt the blood drain from my face. There it was. A shiny new credit card opened in my name. Thousands of dollars racked up across stores I'd never even stepped foot in. Electronics, designer clothes, airline tickets. 6 months of charges. While I was scraping by to help Ryan and Emma, he'd been using my name to fund his little shopping spree. I just sat there for a long time, staring at the screen like maybe if I blinked hard enough, it would all disappear. It didn't. The next few hours were a blur, freezing my accounts, filing fraud claims, setting up alerts. The woman at the credit card company confirmed what I already suspected. The charges were made with my name, my social, my address. This wasn't just betrayal, this was identity theft. And Ryan was the only one with all my info. I wasn't angry. Not right away. What I felt first was heartbreak. After everything I'd done for him, after all the sacrifices, this was how he thanked me. And Emma, sweet, smart, funny Emma, she was stuck in the middle of this mess too. I needed advice. Someone who wasn't going to feed me the family loyalty BS. So I called Uncle Mike. When I laid everything out for him, the charges, the new credit card, Ryan's smug little phone call, there was a long pause on the other end, then a low whistle. Damn, kid, that's cold even for him. What do I do, Mike? I asked, feeling like a kid again. Simple, he said. You lawyer up. But Emma, he cut me off. Emma's not your responsibility, Luke. She's his. If you let this go, you're telling him it's okay. He'll just do it again. He was right. As much as it killed me, as much as I wanted to shield Emma from any fallout, I couldn't let this slide. I wasn't the family bank anymore, and I sure as hell wasn't anyone's doormat. The next morning, I sat down with a lawyer. She listened carefully, flipping through the paperwork I'd already started pulling together. Credit reports, account statements, emails. She tapped her pen against her notepad. We can press charges. Strong case. But, she paused, sometimes a firm warning can do the trick before things get messy. I nodded. I didn't want to ruin Ryan's life. I just wanted mine back. That night I called him. He picked up on the second ring, all fake sweetness. Hey, big bro. No games, Ryan, I said. I know about the cards. I know what you did. Dead silence on the line, then a fake laugh. What are you talking about, man? Don't insult me. I've already filed fraud reports. I've got a lawyer. You can either pay every cent back or you can explain yourself to a judge. Your call. For a second, just a split second, I heard fear creep into his voice. Luke, come on. I was going to pay it back. Things just got tight, and no excuses. I'm giving you one shot to make it right. Don't make me regret it. I hung up before he could weasel out another excuse. And for the first time in a long time, I slept like a rock. A week later, my credit company called. Every penny had been paid off. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last long. Because then I found out how it got paid. Ryan didn't magically grow a conscience. No, he went running back to Mum and Dad. And they, in their infinite wisdom, drained their vacation fund, the one they'd been gushing about nonstop for months, to bail him out. Their Caribbean cruise dreams? Gone. All because they wanted to protect their poor, innocent golden boy from facing the consequences of his actions. I should have been angry. Should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired, like I'd been carrying a dead weight around my neck for years, and only now realized how much it had been dragging me under. But the drama wasn't over yet, not even close. The next morning, my phone rang again. It was Mum. And if I thought she was mad before, I hadn't seen anything yet. Mum didn't even say hello. The second I picked up, she launched right in. Are you happy now, Luke? You've ruined everything. I closed my eyes, counted to 3. Good morning to you too, Mum. She wasn't having it. Your father and I had to give Ryan the money we saved for our anniversary trip. We were supposed to spend February in Aruba, and now we're stuck here because of your tantrum. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second, staring at it like maybe it would explain how this could possibly be real. So, I said slowly, it's my fault that Ryan committed fraud, not Ryan's. That's not the point, she snapped. You should have handled this privately. You didn't have to threaten him. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Handled it privately. Mom, I did handle it privately. For 5 years, while you and Dad turned a blind eye and sailed around the damn world. There was silence on her end, but it wasn't the good kind. It was the seething, simmering kind. You're not the man I thought you were, she said finally, cold as ice. I almost laughed again. Good, because the man you thought I was would have let you and Ryan keep bleeding him dry forever. I hung up before she could say another word. I sat there for a while after that call, just breathing. The thing about cutting ties, about finally standing up for yourself, is no one tells you how lonely it feels at first. Even when you know you're doing the right thing, there's this hollow echo that follows you around for a while, and I wasn't even surprised when Ryan started spinning the story. Suddenly, I was the villain. The heartless brother, the selfish son, the guy who abandoned his family when they needed him most. Even Emma started pulling away. At family dinners, when I even bothered to show up, she barely looked at me. I knew exactly whose words were in her ear. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I kept my distance. I had to. Uncle Mike stayed in my corner, at least. Every time we talked, he reminded me I wasn't crazy. Let Emma spin whatever stories they want. He told me one night over a beer, you did what you had to do. You saved yourself. I tried to believe that. Tried to hold on to it when things got worse. A few weeks later, Emma had a school play. Ryan surprisingly mentioned it to me. Probably because Mum and Dad were riding him to make it look like everything was fine. I showed up, of course. Sat near the back, keeping a low profile. When Emma spotted me in the crowd, her whole face lit up. For a second, it felt like nothing had changed. After the show, I brought her a little bouquet of flowers. Nothing fancy, just some bright daisies, her favourite. She ran over, threw her arms around me, and I swear I almost lost it right there. But Ryan wasn't going to let me have even that small moment. He sauntered over, fake smile plastered across his face. Really, Luke? Flowers? Trying to buy her love now? I stared at him, barely resisting the urge to roll my eyes. It's called supporting your niece, Ryan. You should try it sometime. A few parents nearby glanced over. I could feel their ears perk up, sniffing for drama like sharks scenting blood. Ryan leaned in, voice low and venomous. You think this makes up for abandoning your family? For making Mum and Dad suffer? I kept my face calm. Didn't flinch. I didn't abandon anyone. I just stopped letting you bleed me dry. Ryan's jaw clenched. He wanted to explode, wanted me to match his anger so he could play the victim again. I refused. Instead, I smiled. Good seeing you, Emma. You did amazing. I ruffled her hair and turned to leave, my steps steady, my back straight. The fallout from that scene hit fast. The next morning, Mum called, practically shrieking. How dare you embarrass your brother in public? At Emma's school, of all places. I almost laughed again. It was like she had a script she kept reading from. I didn't embarrass him, Mum. He did that all by himself. You've made your point, she yelled. You can stop punishing him now. This isn't punishment, I said, my voice even. This is life. Actions have consequences. Maybe if you and Dad had taught him that when he was a kid we wouldn't be here now. She hung up on me. No goodbyes, no I love your. Just silence. And honestly, that hurt more than I wanted to admit. A few days later, there was a soft knock at my door. I opened it to find Emma standing there, backpack slung over her shoulder, tears in her eyes. My mum said, I can't call you anymore, she whispered. My chest cracked open. I knelt down to her level. You can always call me, kiddo, always. She bit her lip. Can I stay here for a little while? I didn't even hesitate. Come on in. She settled onto the couch, hugging a pillow to her chest. I made us both some hot cocoa and just sat with her, letting the silence be comfortable instead of heavy. Eventually she spoke. I don't like it there, she said quietly. Mum and Grandma are always fighting, and they say bad things about you. But I know it's not true. I blinked fast, pushing back the sting in my eyes. You're smart, Emma. Smarter than all of us. And no matter what happens, you'll always have me. She nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. That night, as I tucked her in on the couch, I realized something. All those years I thought I was helping Ryan. I wasn't. I was just enabling him. But with Emma, it was different. She deserved better. She deserved honesty, stability, love without conditions. If I could give her even a little bit of that, then maybe everything I'd been through wasn't for nothing. Things didn't magically get better after that. Family dinners stayed cold. Ryan stayed petty. Mom stayed bitter. But I stayed standing. I rebuilt my credit. I took a real vacation for the first time in years. I started living for myself, not out of guilt. And Emma? She kept calling, kept visiting, kept reminding me that sometimes family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shows up. A few months later, she gave me a card she made herself. Construction paper, glitter, the whole 9 yards. Inside, in her neat little handwriting, she wrote, "Thank you for always believing in me. I'm going to be strong, just like you." I hung it on my fridge. And every time I look at it, I remember walking away wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the one I actually deserved. Story 3. You know how they say family is supposed to stick with you through thick and thin? Yeah, well, mine treated me more like background noise. I'm Claire, 36 now. Grew up thinking if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, maybe someone would notice me. Spoiler, they didn't. The golden child was my younger brother, Ryan, 32. If he so much as breathed near success, it was parade time. Meanwhile, I could have landed on the moon, and they would have asked if I remembered to bring back milk. It was always like that. Ryan got a medal for perfect attendance once, full backyard bash, bounce house and all, when I got a scholarship to a top law school. Mum barely looked up from her show and asked if I'd figured out how to pay the rest on my own. When Ryan finally graduated high school barely, my parents handed him the keys to a brand new car. I graduated summa cum laude. Dad couldn't make the ceremony. Ryan had a dentist appointment, but I swallowed it. I always did. Anytime I tried to point out the disparity, it turned into my problem. Claire, you've always been independent. You don't need the attention like Ryan does. We love you both equally, the greatest hits. What they really meant was Ryan needs, so Ryan gets. Claire survives. The financial asks started early too. Even in college, juggling 2 jobs and coursework, I was lucky enough to be the family's emergency fund. Laptop for Ryan, crash repair for his car. Guilt trip calls followed by Venmo requests became the soundtrack of my 20s. I didn't live, I treaded water. Fast forward, I'm a corporate attorney now, director of compliance for a firm that manages billions. I'd fought for every inch of my success alone. Last month, I got a major promotion. Historic, actually, youngest in the firm's 90-year history to hold my position. I called my parents, hoping stupidly that this time might be different. Dad answered, muttered a distracted good for you, then handed the phone off to Mom, who was busy setting up for Ryan's dog's birthday party. No, I'm not kidding. Still, I stayed hopeful. That's the part that gets me. I still wanted to believe. A few days later, I got a text. Family dinner, Friday 7 p.m. at Legrand's. Come if you can. No explanation. No reason why. No mention of who or what we were celebrating. I cleared my schedule, cancelled meetings, bought a $300 bottle of vintage champagne, got a new dress tailored, showed up exactly at 7:00 p.m., heart hammering with stupid hope. The second I stepped into Legrand's, I knew. I saw it, a banner floating above their massive table. Congrats, Ryan, on the promotion. I froze. He had moved from part-time sales associate to assistant manager at a sports gear store. They were celebrating like he'd made CEO my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles. Even my cousins I barely knew. Everyone was there, everyone but me. Or rather, I was technically invited but not expected. I tried to stay cool, clutching my champagne like a shield. I smiled, pretending it didn't sting as I made my way over. That's when Mum intercepted me halfway to the table. "Claire!" she hissed under her breath, blocking my path. "There's no space for you. We didn't think you'd actually come." I stared at her, at the table. Not a single empty chair, not even an extra setting. "You said it was something important," I whispered, still hanging on to that last sliver of hope. "It is for Ryan," she said, like I was stupid for not understanding. 20 years of being the afterthought crystallized in that moment. I set the champagne down on the edge of the table, turned around, walked out without another word. The drive home was a blur of hot tears and white-knuckled steering. I kept telling myself, don't crash, don't crash. I just needed to be home, the only place where I wasn't an intruder. The knock came the next afternoon. I opened the door to find my parents standing there, all solemn, like they were about to deliver grave news. Only it wasn't grief in their eyes. It was entitlement. The bill came to $5,800, Dad said without even stepping inside. I blinked. Mom crossed her arms. Your share is $1,500. I stared at them. I wasn't even at the table. You invited me, I said, slowly. But you told me yesterday you didn't expect me to come. Dad waved that off. Doesn't matter. We booked for a full party including you. It's your obligation. And you're doing well now, honey, Mum added, her voice sliding into that sugary, wounded tone she used whenever she wanted something. Families help each other. After everything we've done for you, everything they'd done for me, I nearly laughed. The scholarships I won, the student loans I repaid, the jobs I worked while Ryan coasted through life. I won't be paying for a dinner I wasn't welcome at, I said calmly, stepping aside to show them the way out. Dad's jaw clenched. Mum's eyes filled with crocodile tears. You'll regret being so selfish, Dad said as they left, practically snarling it. And when the door clicked shut behind them, I slumped against it. Empty, drained, but not broken. I thought it was over. Naive, I know. The next morning, I woke up to a full-scale social media ambush. Mum had posted this tear-stained essay about her cold, heartless daughter abandoning her brother's special night. Ryan chimed in too, posting a selfie with his new title badge and the caption, "Sometimes family isn't blood, it's who shows up." The extended family cousins, second cousins, family friends piled on. Comments rolled in, "So disappointed in you, Claire. Your parents sacrificed so much for you. Ryan always supported you. How could you treat him like this?" Each ping on my phone felt like a slap. Each message another nail in a coffin I didn't ask to climb into. By the time I hit the kitchen floor, phone still buzzing in my hand, I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. All those years of being invisible, and now I was finally seen. As the villain. That same night, I called my therapist in a panic. After I dumped everything, the years of second-class treatment, the manipulation, the financial guilt trips, she said something that changed everything. "Claire, this is emotional abuse." The words hit harder than any insult my parents ever flung at me. Emotional abuse. Not a misunderstanding. Not me being too sensitive. Not family drama. Abuse. Her next question. What are you going to do about it? I didn't know yet, but I knew this. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story again. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I stopped making excuses for them. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the chaos on my phone, and I decided if they were going to paint me as the villain, they were going to meet the real one, not the desperate to please daughter they used to step on, not the quiet scapegoat they shoved into the shadows. Me, Claire, the woman who had built her life with no help from anyone. I spent the next few days gathering proof. Cold, solid, undeniable proof. Screenshots of the dinner invitation sent less than 48 hours before the event. Photos from the restaurant, me standing awkwardly with a bottle of champagne. No chair at the table, no welcome. Copies of messages over the years, requests for money, guilt trips dressed up as family obligations. Every ignored graduation, every brushed aside birthday, every receipt of their silence and neglect. It was all there. And this time, I wasn't going to let them bury it. I wrote a post, not angry, not emotional, just the truth. I laid it all out, how Ryan was always the center of attention, no matter what he did or didn't accomplish, how my achievements were treated like inconveniences, how they'd invited me to a celebration only to humiliate me, and then expected me to pay for the privilege. How their version of family was just another word for wallet. I hit post, turned off my phone, and went for a long walk along the river. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for telling my side. I felt free. When I got back hours later, my phone was melting down. The reaction was explosive. Messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, some furious, some apologetic. A few brave ones backed me up, publicly confirming what I'd said, adding their own stories of being used, ignored, pushed aside. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. I was just the first to say it out loud. Ryan's fiancée even reached out privately, apologizing for the way things had played out. Apparently, she had her own doubts about joining the family circus, but felt trapped, wild. Naturally, my parents didn't take it well. Dad tried the intimidation route first. He sent me this long, half-legal-looking email, CCING, some random attorney at his job, accusing me of defamation and damaging the family's reputation. I almost laughed. It wasn't even a real legal threat, just a desperate scare tactic. The attorney's reply was basically a polite version of "leave me out of this." Then Mum switched tactics, calling my office pretending to be concerned about my mental health. She told the receptionist I was having some kind of breakdown. Hinted maybe I wasn't fit to be working. Luckily, my manager knew better. She pulled me aside, told me what happened, and reassured me the office had my back. It was humiliating. It was ugly. It was exactly the kind of stunt they pulled when they didn't get their way. Ryan didn't stay quiet either. He posted a 10-minute rant on Facebook about how some people can't stand seeing others happy, throwing passive-aggressive jabs about jealousy and bitterness. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because while they were busy throwing tantrums, something bigger was happening. People were waking up. Family members who had always stayed neutral suddenly weren't so neutral anymore. Cousins, old friends, even neighbours. They saw the pattern now, clear as day. It wasn't just about one dinner. It was decades of treating me like I was second tier, then acting shocked when I stopped playing along. 3 days after my post, I made the hardest, best decision of my life. I went no contact. Blocked their numbers, blocked their emails, blocked them on every platform. I called my building and told the front desk not to let them through if they showed up. I notified my company's security just in case Mum decided to get creative again. It wasn't emotional, it wasn't impulsive, it was survival. For the first time ever, I chose me. And you know what? The peace was immediate. The weight I'd carried around for decades, the need to prove I was good enough, the desperate hunger for scraps of their approval, it lifted like a heavy coat falling off my shoulders. I breathed easier. I smiled more. I slept through the night without waking up anxious for the first time in years. Turns out, freedom doesn't come from forgiveness or reconciliation. It comes from walking away. A few months later, I got a private message. It was from Ryan, of all people. He said, "I always knew they favoured me. It was just easier not to fight it. But did you really have to blow everything up?" There it was. Not an apology. Not a reckoning, just guilt about how uncomfortable I made him feel by telling the truth. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. His message said everything. They weren't sorry about what they did. They were sorry they got exposed. I found out through friends later that my parents were still spinning their story, still playing the victims, still blaming me for destroying the family instead of admitting what they'd done. They threw a lavish engagement party for Ryan without me, posted 1,000 pictures online, pretending they were this picture-perfect family. I didn't feel a single twinge of jealousy. I didn't want their table anymore. I was building my own. The best part, in the fallout, I reconnected with my Aunt Melissa, my mum's sister, who had been pushed out of the family decades ago for being difficult. She told me over coffee one day, "They did the same thing to me, Claire. You just had the guts to call it what it was. It clicked then. It wasn't about me being ungrateful, too ambitious, too emotional. It was about a family that needed a scapegoat, and I had finally quit the role. A year later, my life looks nothing like it used to. I've been promoted again, senior director now. I travel, I hike, I host Friendsgiving for a bunch of people who actually like me for who I am, not what I can give them. And yeah, I hear occasional updates about them through the grapevine. Ryan got married last spring. My parents posted about it like they'd discovered the cure for cancer. There was no invitation for me, but there didn't need to be. I wasn't part of that world anymore. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't mourning the loss. I was celebrating it. Family isn't blood. Family is who cheers when you win and stays when you lose. Family is who makes room for you at the table without you having to beg for a chair. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away from the ones who taught you. You were hard to love and teach yourself something better.